now to our final belief of the 12 beliefs that we've been surveying, a survey of Christian beliefs. And belief number 12, God will fulfill his ultimate intention. There's coming a day of divine intervention when Christ will return and God's intentions for creation are going to be fulfilled. Now, a technical theological term that is sometimes used to describe this belief is the word eschatology. And it comes from eschatos, meaning last or at the end. So eschatology talks about what is coming at the end, the consummation of all things, the fulfillment of God's intentions. Now, there is a tendency sometimes to focus on the sensational, but the essence of eschatology is, not the identity of this or that person or Antichrist or marks of the beast and so on. The emphasis of eschatology is the fulfillment of God's intention to bring the reign of God to earth so that all of creation, heaven and earth, is within the reign of God, within the kingdom of God. Now, eschatology has two aspects that we're going to consider. We're going to look at personal eschatology first, and then cosmic eschatology. Personal eschatology concerns what happens immediately after death and what is the eternal state of souls. What happens to us as persons immediately after death and the eternal state. And cosmic eschatology concerns the final judgment and so forth. So let's look at personal eschatology. Personal eschatology concerns death. When the soul or the spirit leave the body, death is the result of sin. Paul calls death the last enemy in 1 Corinthians 15:26. And it happens to all with the exception of those who would be alive at the time of Christ's second coming. I've always thought if this pastoring Bible college thing didn't work out for me, I'd probably want to maybe own a funeral home because there's job security, because everybody dies. Not everybody goes to Bible school, but everybody dies, right? None of us gets out of here alive. So death is a part of our personal eschatology, that each one of us will experience our own end. And then secondly, we need to look at what we call the intermediate state. That is, what happens to us when we die? What do we experience when we die? Where do we go when we die? Well, a couple of options that Christians have put out there. One is soul sleep. So some have proposed that the soul is unconscious between the time of death and the time of the resurrection, so that from the dead person's perspective, they really pass immediately from this life into the life of the resurrection without any consciousness of the time that has transpired between. I remember when I got my wisdom teeth out, my wife took me to the dental surgeon, and he led me into a room and said, "Sit here in this chair, Mr. Deeks." I said, "Okay." And he said, "Now take this little pill." "Okay." "And breathe on this little mask." "Okay." "And count to 10." "Okay." And then he said to me, okay, now, Mr. Deeks, let's get up and let's go over to this room over here. And I said, okay. And the procedure was done. So I had no consciousness of falling asleep. I had no awareness of waking up again. But in between count to 10 and let's go into this room over here, 2 hours had transpired. I had no awareness of that 2 hours. The weirdest feeling ever. So proponents of soul sleep are basically saying the same thing happens to us. That we die, go into a state of sleep, our soul goes to sleep, and then the resurrection happens, and we are not aware of the period of time that transpires in between them. So for the experience of the believer, let's say that you have the unfortunate experience of, everybody, this is the preacher's favorite illustration, you die by getting hit by a bus. I don't know why that's so popular with preachers, but that's what we tend to try. So let's say that you get hit by a bus and die instantly. So when you die instantly, your experience, you do not experience the, let's say the Lord comes back in another 200 years, I don't know. You have no consciousness of that gap of time between the time the bus hit you and you died instantly and the time of the resurrection. So, you're walking across the street and bam, you're in your resurrection body with all the saints in heaven and with the Lord and so on. So that's the idea of soul sleep. You enter immediately from your perspective into the resurrected state, even though time has transpired, but you're not aware of it. Now, soul sleep is endorsed by Seventh-day Adventists, but almost nobody else. So soul sleep is really not a classical Christian belief in any kind of comprehensive way. But I'm just sharing it with you for the sake of information. A second option is immediate blessedness or immediate punishment. And so the dead pass immediately into God's presence, or they pass immediately into a state of separation from God, conscious. So a conscious awareness of being in God's presence, or a conscious awareness of separation from God. And this verdict then is officially confirmed at the final judgment. So we enter immediately into blessedness, or we enter immediately into separation. However, that verdict will be on the day of judgment officially confirmed in some way. It's kind of like there's sometimes a lapse between the court convicts someone and when the court sentences someone, but the convicted person still goes to jail as they await their sentence. So there's that sense in which those that are separated from God are immediately separated from God while they await the official pronouncement of that sentence of separation from God. So that's the two main aspects of personal eschatology is, our death and what happens to us immediately upon death. And that sense of immediate blessedness or immediate judgment, punishment, or separation, however you want to call it or describe it, is the classical Christian position.